You tell yourself it's just bad luck, that she's different this time, that the red flags aren't really red, just misunderstood. But somewhere deep in your chest, a familiar weight returns. You've been here before. The same chaos, the same longing, the same emotional roller coaster masked as love. And you can't help but ask yourself, why do I keep falling for the same kind of woman? Carl Jung believed this isn't just about taste. It's not about chemistry or coincidence. It's a sign that something inside you is unfinished. That the woman you're chasing isn't just her. She's a mirror, a projection, a symbolic representation of something you're not facing in yourself. And the more unconscious you are of that, the more you'll keep mistaking dysfunction for destiny. Attraction isn't random. It's revealing. You are pulled not by logic, but by your unconscious, the deepest layers of your psyche that are still trying to resolve old stories, unhealed wounds, unmet needs. You chase intensity and call it connection. You confuse being triggered with being alive. And each time you get burned, you tell yourself it'll be different next time, without ever asking why the fire feels so familiar. Jung didn't want you to stop loving. He wanted you to start loving consciously, to realize that the chaos you keep returning to isn't about the other person. It's about the parts of yourself you've yet to integrate. Until you do, you'll keep writing the same love story, just with different faces. This isn't about blame. It's about clarity. Today, we go deep into the hidden forces shaping your attraction, into the anima, the shadow, and the truth your desire is trying to tell you. Because once you see it, you'll never choose the same way again. You think you're choosing her, that your type is just a preference, some mix of beauty, intelligence, and mystery that makes your heart race. But Carl Jung would tell you otherwise. Attraction isn't preference, it's pattern. And it rarely begins in the present. It begins in the unconscious, where your history lives, unspoken, unhealed, and still in control. When you meet her, something clicks. But that click isn't truth, it's recognition. She fits a story you've been carrying for years, maybe since childhood, maybe since your first heartbreak. It's not love at first sight. It's repetition. A familiar feeling wrapped in a new form. You call it fate. Jung calls it projection. You're not seeing her. You're seeing yourself, reflected back through the lens of your unmet needs. You feel drawn to women who stir something deep in you. But what they stir isn't always love. It's longing. It's the ache of something unfinished. And the more powerful the pull, the more likely it's coming from a place you haven't explored. This is why the wrong woman feels so right. Because she mirrors the unresolved. Because she evokes the very chaos you've mistaken for connection. This isn't weakness, it's unconsciousness. Until you bring the pattern into awareness, it will keep guiding your choices. You'll keep calling dysfunction intensity and emptiness mystery. And each time you'll blame her, without ever seeing the mirror she was holding. Jung believed that who we are attracted to tells us more about our own fragmentation than it does about compatibility. She isn't just a person, she's a symbol. And unless you decode what that symbol means, you'll keep falling for her, again and again, without ever falling into yourself. Deep inside every man's psyche lives a woman he doesn't consciously know. She has no name, no face, no single form, but she shapes his romantic life with terrifying precision. Carl Jung called her the anima, the inner feminine, the soul image that acts as a guide, a muse, and often a trap. And until you understand her, she'll keep choosing your lovers for you. The anima isn't who you want. She's who you're missing. She represents all the parts of yourself you've buried: your emotional depth, your vulnerability, your intuition, your chaos. The more disconnected you are from those traits, the more you'll seek them in women. But not consciously. The anima doesn't whisper. She projects. She appears in the form of a woman who feels magical, hypnotic, almost divine. You don't just fall for her. You idolize her. You surrender to her. You give her your center. But the anima is not here to complete you. She's here to awaken you. And when you mistake her projection for the woman herself, you set yourself up for collapse. Because no real person can carry the weight of your unconscious. You begin to demand from her the feelings you've refused to feel in yourself. You want her to be soft, wild, understanding, seductive, nurturing, all at once. And when she fails, as she must, the illusion breaks. Love turns into resentment, fascination into blame. Jung warned that an unintegrated anima leads a man not toward love, but toward confusion. She's not the enemy, but she is dangerous when left in the dark. Because as long as she chooses for you, you won't fall for women. You'll fall for symbols. And until you bring her home, until you own the traits you've projected, you'll never see clearly who's really standing in front of you. There's a certain kind of woman who makes you feel like home, but not the kind of home filled with warmth and safety, the kind filled with ghosts. And still, you return, not because it feels good, but because it feels known. Carl Jung understood that the unconscious doesn't just seek pleasure, it seeks resolution. And sometimes that means recreating pain. You're not just drawn to her because of who she is. You're drawn to her because of who she reminds you of. The way she withdraws, the way she criticizes, the way she makes you feel like you're never quite enough. It echoes something. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the voice of your past. Maybe a parent, maybe your first love, maybe the part of you that never felt chosen. You're not chasing love. You're chasing a correction. The psyche does this on purpose. It repeats old wounds like a ritual, hoping that this time the story will end differently. That this time, you'll finally be seen. Finally be loved. Finally be safe. But that hope keeps you stuck in a loop. You ignore the red flags, minimize the damage, rationalize the chaos, all because some part of you still believes that healing has to come from the same kind of pain that broke you. This is the trauma bond. And it doesn't feel like trauma. It feels like destiny, like chemistry, like something you can't live without. But what you're really doing is reenacting a wound with someone new, hoping they'll rescue you from the hurt. Jung would say the only way out is not through her, but through you. Through confronting the past you've avoided. Because as long as your childhood runs your attraction, love won't feel like healing. It'll feel like survival. And survival isn't intimacy. It's imprisonment. She's wild, unpredictable, emotional, maybe even destructive. And yet, you can't look away. You don't just want her, you need her. But Carl Jung would ask, is it her you're chasing? Or the part of yourself you've buried? The shadow isn't evil. It's everything you've disowned. The traits you were told not to express. The desires you've pushed down. The emotions you've judged or feared. And for many men, That shadow contains softness, chaos, creativity, rage, intuition, the very things society told you made you weak. So you hide them. You armor up. You become controlled, logical, restrained. But the psyche doesn't forget. What you reject in yourself, you begin to crave in others. And that's where she comes in. She lives the way you won't let yourself live. She speaks her truth without apology. She moves with fire, with unpredictability, with feeling. You call her intoxicating. But Jung would call her a projection of your shadow. Not because she isn't real, but because your fascination isn't really about her. It's about you. The part of you that's been silenced for too long. Attraction becomes a kind of hunger. You chase her, not to know her, but to feel the parts of yourself you've lost. You want her to wake you up, to bring you back to life. But the problem with shadow projection is this. What you idolize, you eventually resent, because no one can carry your unlived life for you. And what starts as desire turns into conflict. Jung warned that until you reclaim your shadow, you'll keep projecting it. You'll fall for women who trigger you because they reflect what you refuse to see. And until you integrate that energy, love will feel like chasing fire with bare hands, always burning, never holding. You say you want love, depth, intimacy, but look closer. What you're chasing isn't closeness, it's conquest. You don't fall for the woman who sees you. You fall for the one who doesn't, the one who pulls away, the one who keeps you guessing. And when she finally gives you a piece of herself, it feels like victory. But Carl Jung would tell you, this isn't about connection. It's about your ego. There's a kind of thrill in the unattainable, not because it's fulfilling, but because it confirms something about you, that you're wanted, desired, worth the effort. You mistake that adrenaline for love, but love doesn't need to be hunted. What you're addicted to is the chase, because the chase feeds the ego, while intimacy threatens it. Jung believed that when we don't know who we are, we look for mirrors in other people. And the harder they are to win, the more valuable the reflection feels. You tell yourself it's chemistry, but it's strategy. You don't want her because she's right for you. You want her because she's hard to get. And her resistance becomes proof of your worth if you can break through. But here's the truth. The chase is hollow. It's performance. It's a game where winning leaves you emptier than you started. Because once you have her, the thrill fades. And without the ego rush, you don't know what's left. Love? Or just a trophy you no longer want? Jung warned that an inflated ego disguises itself as desire. But what it really fears is vulnerability. Real connection asks you to stop performing, to be seen, to risk not being chosen. And until you can do that, you'll keep chasing women, not for love, but for proof that you matter. Even if it breaks you, every time. You say you've learned, that next time will be different. But then it happens again. The same story, just a new face, the same chaos, the same confusion. You ask yourself how you ended up here, again. But Carl Jung would tell you this isn't a mistake. It's a pattern, and your psyche is playing it on repeat for a reason. What feels like bad luck is actually a compulsion, a psychological loop. Jung believed that the unconscious seeks healing through reenactment. If a wound wasn't addressed, it doesn't disappear. It reappears, in different clothes, with a different name. But it's the same emotional blueprint, the same dynamic. the same pain that never got a voice the first time around. And now, you're trying to rewrite it with someone who reminds you, subtly or painfully, of where it all began. This isn't about attraction, it's about recognition. Some part of you is still trying to resolve the original wound. Maybe it's abandonment. Maybe it's criticism. Maybe it's love that felt like control. You find her, subconsciously, not because she's right, but because she fits the unfinished narrative. And if you can just get this woman to love you, maybe you can finally undo the damage that came before her. But it never works. Because she's not the healer. She's the trigger. A mirror for what's still raw. Jung taught that repetition will continue until awareness intervenes, until you stop reaching for redemption through someone else, until you realize the story doesn't need a new ending. It needs a new author. You don't keep choosing the wrong woman by accident. You do it because your psyche is begging for wholeness, but healing isn't found in her. It's found in breaking the pattern, in choosing consciousness over compulsion. That's when love begins to feel different, because you finally are. You've spent years chasing women who feel like fire, only to get burned. You've called it passion, fate, even love. But Carl Jung saw it as something deeper. The anima, unrecognized, projected, and unmet within yourself. The inner feminine you've been searching for in everyone but you. And until you face her, every relationship will feel like a storm you can't control. The anima isn't here to torment you. She's here to complete you. Not through another person, but through integration. She's the part of you that feels, that creates, that softens, that listens to instinct and dreams and symbols. When you don't know her, she owns you. She makes your desires irrational, your attractions compulsive, your love unstable. But when you welcome her, when you sit with the emotions you once denied, the vulnerabilities you once judged, something shifts. You stop seeking women to rescue you from your emotional illiteracy. You stop idealizing the chaotic, the unavailable, the ones who stir your wound instead of healing it. You begin to see clearly, to choose differently. Love stops being a high. It becomes a mirror, not of your need, but of your wholeness. Jung believed that when the anima is integrated, a man becomes grounded, intuitive, creative, capable of truly relating, not just reacting. The women he once chased now lose their mystique, not because they've changed, but because he has. What once looked like magic now looks like a pattern. And what once felt like love now feels like a lesson finally learned. This is the turning point, the place where projection ends and presence begins. You no longer chase symbols. You no longer mistake intensity for intimacy. You meet love as a man who knows himself, because he's finally met her inside. And that's when everything changes, for good.